Check. Mic check 1 2. Mic check 1 2. I ain't gonna hold you. I'm gonna get straight into it. This video, I'm going to be discussing the subject of banishing rituals. So the video is going to be about banishing, not giving out actual banishing rituals, but discussing the concept of banishing itself, which is kind of a misleading concept. But anyway, let's get into it. I brought several books out that I'll show just to give out some different resources where you can find different authors who give out their own tweaked banishing rituals or whatever. But we're going to start with, I want to read from this book. This is the banishing that I perform. I do it daily. Some days I don't. I typically banish before I go to sleep at night. But sometimes I just don't, right? But anyway, so I want to read this because out of everything I really learned about banishing, Damon Brand was really the main one who really went into detail and can give you some insight on the whole notion of banishing, right? So anyway, I'm going to get into it and we go from there. And then at the end of it all, I'll chime in and give my own 2 cents on why I started banishing and what effect it has in my life. Nonetheless, I ain't going to hold you no more. Let's go. So, I'm going to jump around. I ain't going to read every single word in this chapter. But I'm going to give you the gist of it all. So, what happens when you banish? A banishing serves several purposes. At its most basic, a banishing ritual offers protection. It's a way of saying go away, quite forcefully, to anything supernatural that may be nearby. It clears a psychic space around yourself and puts up a protective barrier. This is an ideal way to prepare your space before working any magic, as it ensures there are no unwanted presences that might latch on to your psychic energy. If, however, you choose to work with the darker side of magic, you may find that access to a banishing ritual can be comforting and useful. Whatever magic you use, it can help. The main reason to use a daily banishing, however, is for the general protection it provides, as well as improving your magical focus. If you have been cursed or attacked psychically, banishing rituals can help limit the effects of the attack so you can start using the ritual right away. You will need to deal with the attack separately as well, and that will be explained later in the book. Get started with banishing as soon as you can. It won't solve all your problems by itself, but it will limit any attacks on you and prepare you for other protection rituals. And then, when you have solved all your problems, a twice daily banishing can protect you from future attacks of all kinds. The banishing should be practiced twice a day, given that the entire banishing can be performed mentally. This is easy to do. If you practice this banishing twice every day, you are much less likely to be the victim of any attack, of any type of psychic attack or curse. You are not obliged to banish every day. And sometimes I feel so at ease with the world that I don't bother to banish. But if you want to keep up the best protection, a banishing performed twice each day is a good way to sharpen your magical powers and protect yourself. You are free to learn any banishing you like, and there are many on offer, free of charge, online. But this book reveals the sword banishing. The beauty of this banishing is that it can be performed in silence, using nothing more than your imagination. Many styles of banishing involve wandering around in circles, waving daggers and shouting out angelic names, which can be a surprisingly enjoyable and dramatic experience. But it isn't ideal if you want to perform magic quickly and discreetly. Some people like to banish as soon as they finish a ritual, to make sure that whatever spirit they called upon has gone off to do its work. I don't usually banish after a ritual because it seems like overkill. If you ask the spirit to go and do its work, it should leave without being forced to leave. Imagine asking an employee to come closer so you can whisper something, telling your worker what task you want them to do next, and then you push them away roughly to make sure they get on with the job. If you banish at the end of a ritual, it can feel a bit like that, or at least like you're slamming the door on your guest. So as rule, I give a spirit license to depart and leave it at that, and use banishing separately. I will banish after a ritual if the spirit seems to linger in my mind, or if there are unexpected side effects, such as crashes and bangs and so on. If anything feels a bit too supernatural or outside of my control, then I will banish to shut it up. Crashes and bangs aren't usually anything to worry about. Often, it can just be a sign that the spirit is connected to you harmlessly. But it can sometimes mean that something else slipped in during the ritual and is trying to cause mischief. And if you've called on a particularly aggressive demon that refuses to leave, you might want to shut it up so you can get on with your day. If anything's disturbing you, you have the right to banish it and find some peace. Of course, crashes and bangs can just be paranoia. If you keep a log of how many times a bird flies into your window, or a cat screeches, or you get sick, it happens all the time. But when it occurs after a ritual, people often assume the worst and think that they're under attack. If in doubt, you can banish. It's quick and easy and it works, but there's no need to banish after every single magical act. A banishing doesn't just say go away. It also has the slightly ironic effect of making you more visible on the astral plane. Let me say that part again. This is what you often don't hear a lot from people when it comes to banishing rituals. A banishing doesn't just say go away. It also has the slightly ironic effect of making you more visible on the astral plane. That is, you become more noticeable to all supernatural entities. A good banishing makes you visible while offering protection so that only the spirits you directly and deliberately want to contact will get through to you. This is why I like to banish before a ritual. It clears the space. It makes sure I'm visible to any being I may be calling, and it strengthens my psychic power. I know that after banishing, I am shining brightly on the astral plane, and that making contact with any spirits of all kinds will be safer and easier. Whatever banishing you use, this psychic brightness can make you attractive to unwanted entities. Whatever banishing you use, this psychic brightness can make you attractive to unwanted entities. The vast majority of the time, they will not be able to do anything other than make a noise, make your mood change, or alter the atmosphere in the room slightly. If you complete a ritual and feel any sense of unease, or that an unwanted entity has been attracted into your life, feel free to banish again, and you will be safe. You can reserve banishing for rituals, or make it a regular part of your daily magical work to keep you safe. Personally, I banish twice a day, and will banish again anytime that I am about to perform a magic ritual. This is the approach that I recommend. It's ideal to banish twice a day, once in the morning and once at night. This will make sure you're more receptive to magical results and safe from curses, attacks, and physical harm. If you want to work on your magical development, this is a routine that you should employ. If you cannot banish twice a day, don't worry. You won't suddenly be assailed by hordes of demons. But if you can find the time to make this a regular practice, it only takes moments, and the benefits are noticeable. I think I kind of want to leave it at that because that's pretty much sums it all up. Fuck it. I'll finish it off just because. In an ideal world, you should perform the first banishing before sunrise and the second banishing after sunset. Not many of us live in an ideal world. You may work shifts, have kids, have to get up when the alarm clock goes off, or just be too busy to get this work done. There are many things that make the ideal approach impossible. If that's the case, don't worry, but perform the banishing when you can. I found the most useful time to do the banishing is as soon as I wake up, before getting up. Where I live most of the time, that's before sunrise. If the sun has risen, I don't worry about it and banish anyway. Doing the banishing in bed before you get up only works if you can wake up without disturbing anybody, because if you have kids or a partner, you don't want them talking while you performing the magic. I perform the second banishing just before I fall asleep. So it's always performed in bed with my eyes closed when I appear to be going to sleep. I know people who perform the banishing while in the shower. It wastes water but offers privacy. Or when pretending to visit the bathroom. It's not glamorous, but angels really don't mind where you are or what you're doing when you banish. Some people do the banishing when Some people do the banishing when being driven to work. You don't want to do any magic while you are driving your own car or while sitting on a train. There are many times to get this banishing done once you make the commitment. The good news is that you don't need an altar or a robe or any purification rituals. There's no need for candles, salt, herbs, oils, or incense. Despite this, our simple banishing works as effectively as any we've known when you follow the instructions written. All right, and then it gives the instructions for this sword banishing. So, all right, so all right, so that's the most in-depth, insightful read I've ever read on banishing. And so this sword banishing, which is in this, that's the banishing that I do. I've been doing it for a few years now. As I said, I usually typically try to do it right before I go to sleep, as far as daily. But I also will do it before I do any magic ritual. And he mentions crashes and bangs in there, and he talks about how when you do these banishing rituals and they brighten you up and you do definitely become more visible to entities. After I started banishing, for like that first week, I know it was the first week, right? Then I start hearing like the just paranormal activity, just supernatural shit, right? When you hear like noises, like a loud noise that like has obviously like no source to it, like what the fuck could have made that sound, right? And then like I would just banish and really don't worry about it, have to worry about it for a while. So I said that to say that the banishing rituals, because you calling on these divine beings, right? Most of these, yeah, in essence, you're going to be calling on these archangels or angels, these divine entities, right? That's like the purpose of the banishing and making your space sacred. So it definitely, right, because these are high frequency beings. So invoking them definitely brightens you up when you banishing your space. But though I never been like harmed or nothing, like other than that, like I've never had anything get to me, so to speak. Like, it definitely does protect you as well, and is nothing like it was. I can only speak for myself. Like, it's not. It faded. It came to a point for me though, but I had so much shit going on though, right? Because I don't just be into doing the like physically magic rituals and shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, also into the whole astral traveling thing and all the shit that comes along with that, and interacting with a bunch of different entities um, on that level, and just so whatever. All right, but I would say like if you in, but it's definitely important. I feel like if you into like magic and really getting really into the shit, like doing the work and tapping into the energy and shit like that, and like yeah, you need to be banishing or at least definitely have access to banishing rituals, right? So how and I'm saying that from experience because how I came to get involved with even caring or wanting to learn about any kind of banishing and such was some years ago when I was really first getting into really like doing magic rituals, like legit, like was studying, learning, and actually doing the rituals, and started getting results, and right, and was having a little influence. But like I said, I was already into. I've been into spirituality for like hands on for over the last decade, right? So it was just probably just a time. And I never, before that, I never known anything about a banishment or nothing. What brought me to knowing that like I needed to learn how to get some control over some shit, because at the last place I was living in, like I was saying, I was doing this magic and shit and doing other practices and astral projection and all this type of shit, right? So I knew my light was on, and I was knew how to turn, like what in effect what was happening is I was turning my light on and I was shining bright, right? But I had no knowledge, no know-how when it came to effectively turning the light off or hitting the off switch, right? It's a reason why rituals have an opening and a closing. And back then, I had a lack of respect for the closing part of it. And nights and shit, I would be asleep, and I'm already sensitive when it comes to the spiritual realm anyway. And I would be asleep at night in the beds and would like wake up seeing shit, the sensations, feeling shit, hearing shit, like not even hearing shit in my outside, in the outside environment. But, wake up spooked and shit. knowing it's the presence of a spirit and shit, and you know, popping, hearing the spirit voice pop in your head. And lucky for me, like it'd be a friendly. I remember one night I woke up and shit like that, and I was tweaking because I knew I felt like like it looked like it was three shadow figures standing over my bed and shit, and I woke up. Right, so this probably like 4 or 5 years ago type shit. And so I tweaked. I was like, what the fuck? You know what I'm saying? Get the fuck away from me, whatever. And then a voice, and she popped in my head, and she's like, I came to you nicely. But it was a spirit like that I was already familiar with, like hearing. When I told that story about the very first time that I ever heard the voice of the spirit talk to me by answering questions that I was asking. Like it was that same voice that I heard in the beginning. Anyway, that's a bit too much information. But so experiencing that shit and not knowing what to do is what led me into like learning about the whole banishing thing, right? And whenever I started banishing and that shit, it definitely started setting shit. My shit is way much more orderly now than before. Once I started banishing, right? I would say my advice to be anybody that isn't into it yet, it'd be like, it's always good to know something or to have access to something. Like if you really ain't into it, like then there really ain't nothing to play with. Because I started off by playing with the shit. And when I say playing with the shit, I'm talking about years ago. My very first time trying to make up my own magic ritual. I didn't know nothing about magic. I just was curious and I was convinced that it was real, right? Because I had got into the law of attraction, you know what I'm saying, and the new age shit, right? And I manifested a thing or two doing just the basic shit, right? Visualizations type shit. And that led me to like, okay, down the magic rabbit hole. And I didn't study that shit or nothing. I was just kind of seeing a couple of YouTube videos and shit on magic, and I know people saying, oh, you can make up your own rituals and all this shit, and I didn't know nothing about none of that shit. And I got a piece of paper, and I drew a pentagram on it, right? Because I was familiar with the symbol of the pentagram and, you know, representing the elements and whatnot. And I had a pendulum that I used to play with for real. Ask questions to and shit. This is like when I first stepped foot on trying to get into the whole magic thing. And so I drew that star on a piece of paper, and I remember I held the pendulum above it. And I can't remember what energy or whatever I was trying to evoke. I said something like some protection. Whatever the fuck I said, like, I was playing with it. It was what I was doing. I was just seeing if I was going to get an effect. And I definitely got an effect. So the pendulum, you know, it starts swinging, but only difference is it'll always swing. But this time, I was holding it over the pentagram, and this motherfucker started swinging like like a carnival ride. I'm talking this motherfucker was whipping. Like if I would have let go of it, like that motherfucker would have shot across the room. I'm talking about it was swinging like that. And that motherfucker got swinging like that, not too well. And I'm like, then I felt this energy, like when when you can feel the presence like of a heavy ass energy, and it came into the room, and I could just feel this heavy ass presence, and it was so super intimidating. So I was like, all right, whatever. So I stopped. I lay down in bed, like, all right, I'm just gonna lay down and ignore getting on my phone type shit. And this motherfucker was so heavy, and it was coming from the corner of the room, and I'm talking about just an extremely heavy presence, like undeniable. It make the hairs on my neck and shit was standing up, like that shit was spooky, and it lingered there for a minute, right? And I just kept trying to act like I was annoying shit, and then after a while, you could just feel the room get lighter. Like literally, you can just feel the motherfucker was gone. And that's when I was like, all right, I got to studying and shit. So don't play with this shit, but anyway, if you're into doing magic, learn to banishing shit. That's what I'm getting at. All right, so the last part, different books. This is what I was reading from. It got banishing in here. They give out the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, and some other banishing, but it's mainly centered around the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram. I'm going to be diving into that on the channel here shortly. This book, Scrying for Beginners by Donald Todd, so you can find a unique version of banishing. So like all of these different banishings, and they just got their own little tweaked versions of banishing. Here, I've used this banishing ritual in this book. It works extremely well, extremely fast. It's not like a daily banishing, but it's a banishing that if you need a banish negative energy and don't know what to do, I'd say get this right here. Definitely. Philip Cooper book. He always typically gives a banishing formula in his book. That one goes into detail. You can find a banishing and all kinds of other protection rituals and shit in this book by Jason Miller. I'm sure I got more, but shit, that's enough. Like, you can find whatever floats your boat, whatever your cup of tea is. Really just read, explore some different techniques and styles. But yeah, if you're going to be into the work and you thinking you just so good or protected, you just don't need to know a banishing, then you probably full of shit. Cause I was. That's how I used to be. I'm protected on it. Man, I'm out this time though. I'm gone.